disgust with anything that she deems to be clutter in the moment. So occasionally I will get a box in the mail filled with childhood memorabilia that she thinks holds more meaning for me than it does for my siblings. And in this particular box, among other things, was a photograph. In the photograph, I am 10 years old, and I am sitting on the couch in my house on the farm in Mississippi. I'm surrounded by my 3 siblings and 2 other children that live and work another part of the farm with their family. There is an open box on my lap. My hands are in the box, and my face is upturned and tear-stained. It looked like this. The only gift I ever got, that was completely a surprise. I mean, totally out of left field. Never in a million years would I ever expect to get this gift. And it was December 23rd, 1980. The Starneses were over for a little Christmas party. My sisters and I had made fancy hors d'oeuvres. Kraft cheese singles, unwrapped, served with crispy saltine crackers. A Vienna, which we called Viennese, sausage tower held intricately together with toothpicks. Tostitos chips, served with Rotel cheese dip that had been slow cooking for hours. And sausage balls. For dessert, we had 2 kinds of fudge, chocolate chip cookies and magic cookie squares. We were very much into sugar. We were through eating and gift exchanging, and I had even had my bath and was sitting on the couch in my long flannel granny gown, surrounded by the other children, when my mom came back into the room carrying a box announcing that there was one more gift to be handed out tonight. And she walked over to the couch and she laid the box in my lap. I couldn't believe it. Me? I mean, y'all, I'm the youngest of 4 children. I was the last to ever get any new clothes, the one that my mother left behind at the grocery store and frequently forgot at the bus stop. And I certainly was unaccustomed to having everyone looking at me, so my heart was pounding in my chest as my hands lifted the open flaps of the box and I peered in to scoop up the first love of my life. A puppy! Y'all, she was this big, and she had long floppy ears. She was a basset hound, and we named her, I know, she was so cute, and we named her Belle. Belle became the reason that I couldn't go to sleep at night and the reason that I got up in the morning. I could not get enough of that sweet little creature. Y'all, she had the cutest little bark. And when she barked, her mouth was a perfect little circle. It went like this. I'm going to do it for you. I used to go out on the porch with her and pretend that she was giving me barking lessons. She would watch me bark, and then she would bark. And then she would watch me bark, and then she would bark. And it went back and forth like that for a little bit. And when she ate, her ears would get down in her food, so we had to flip up her ears on top of her head using one of my mother's hair clips. And she would even trip over her ears when she walked. And I also got that Christmas a Kodak C110 camera that kind of goes, and you had to advance on the bottom. My sister Tracy and I went through rolls and rolls of film taking pictures of her. There were pictures of her in the basket of my bicycle as I rode along the gravel road in front of my house, her ears billowing in the wind. And there were silhouette shots of me and her, close-ups of her ear, close-ups of her other ear, and pictures of her sitting in the front yard looking out over the miles and miles of cotton fields that surrounded my house, lost in thought. She was very introspective. She was also really, really smart. She used to sit between me and my sister Tracy while we watched Johnny Carson. And every time Johnny made a joke, she would look at Tracy and she would look at me. Clearly, she knew comedy. She also knew how to stink. That dog was the stinkiest thing this side of heaven. We even took her to the vet once because my mother could not stand it. My mom asked the vet, "She smells awful. Is there anything you can do?" To which the vet replied through his chewing tobacco, "Well, she is a hound dog." So my sister Tracy and I, we would frequently give her baths, and we even brushed her teeth with my older sister's toothbrush. So one summer morning, my father, who at the time I called Daddy, had gotten up early as usual to go out to the field, and he let Belle outside. And I used to always worry about her when she would be out in the yard by herself because all the tractors and trucks would be coming and we didn't have a fenced-in yard. And on this particular morning, she wasn't waiting for me like she usually did on the back porch. So I searched the yard, called under the house, walked out to the chemical house. Belle! Nothing. One of the tractor drivers, Laydell, he lived in a house that was just behind the hedge that was just behind our house. This house that Laydell lived in was a tin-roofed, bare wood shotgun shack that was so generously supplied by the generationally wealthy plantation owner, Mr. Frank Mitchner, everybody. Yes! Woo! Laydell's house had no insulation, no electricity, and no indoor plumbing. This was 1981. I called through the hedge. Belle! I heard a rustle. It was coming from over there near Laydell's outhouse, which really was just a shit shack. It was a lean-to made with scrap boards placed over a 5x5 area of bare dirt. Wait, I heard it again. A little rustle, a grunt, a snort. Oh God, was it Laydell or Belle? I tiptoed around the little hedge, got closer to the shit shack. Belle! 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 And there she was in the inside corner of Laydell's shit shack. This part happens in slow motion. At the sound of her name, her head jerks up. She looks in the direction of my voice. Her shit-laden ears take flight as she flings her head around and they slap up against her face. She pauses mid-chew. A little piece of toilet paper dangling from her mouth. In my bare feet and my long t-shirt, because I used to sleep in my daddy's t-shirts, I tiptoe across the minefield that is the ground of Laydell Shit Shack, scoop Belle up, and with muffled screams, run around the hedge, through my yard. My feet are covered in human waste. I'm carrying a shit-covered dog. I run through my house and into the bathtub where I give her a bath where my sisters also bathe. I brushed her teeth, too. My mother made me comment out the tub every day for 2 weeks. About a month later, my sister Tracy and I were scheduled to go spend a couple of weeks with my grandmother. I used to always love going to my grandmother's house, because she would take us to the movies and the water slide, and we would stay up late running after fireflies in her backyard and listening to the train rumble on the tracks out back. But this year, I really didn't want to go. I just didn't want to leave Belle. But I did, and I had a grand, exotic time. And I talked to my mother on the phone once during that time, because this was landlines, and it was long distance. We didn't talk and text constantly with people. And I said, "How's Belle?" And she said, "Oh, she's fine." "What's she doing?" "Oh, she's in the backyard laying under the mimosa tree." And I could just picture it, because that's always where she would lay in the heat of the day. So finally, it was time for my daddy to come and pick us up. And I ran to the door. First thing out of my mouth was, "How's Belle?" And he said, "Belle's dead, honey." I ran over her accidentally coming in from the field. I wasn't used to emotional outbursts, so I ran down the hall and I threw myself on the bed, believing, not believing, sobbing. From the other room, I could hear clinks and plinks of plates and forks as my grandmother served up the watermelon that had been chilling in the fridge. And I thought, how can they act like nothing has happened? Didn't they know that the whole world had just imploded? I didn't know how I could ever come out of that room. After a while, I heard the heavy footsteps of my grandmother walk down the hallway, and she came in the room, and she sat down on the bed next to me, and she said, "You stop that crying. No kid of mine's gonna cry her eyes out over some dumb dog." And then she got up and she rejoined the party. And I thought, I will never be like you. Because even though I was 10 years old, I knew that when I saw that little puppy in that box, my heart had gone from this little compressed magic towel. You know, those towels that you add water to and suddenly it becomes really fluffy and big? That was my heart when she stepped into it. And when she stepped out, yeah, I was going to cry for the love of my life. I'm so glad that I had that chance to love her. I wish that I hadn't lost her, but loving her for those 8-9 months that I did was so wonderful. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I hope that you all get puppies for Christmas. Oh, I was supposed to introduce Lee. Lee, this is Lee, and she is our next storyteller.
That was beautiful, but I just want to have a little bit of a cry before I start my story. Everybody. So it was the fall of 2020, and I was doing my daily meditation routine. And I was, clothes, so, no, I wasn't peaceful, actually. What was happening is I was just trying to come to grips and mourning the separation of myself from my daughter. We were estranged, and that was just like something that I never expected. I thought I should get the Martha Stewart Award for good parenting, but that didn't happen. So there I was trying to figure out this whole estrangement thing, and there had been little hints along the way, and I should have called and had a conversation with her, but I thought, no, if I just ignore it, it'll go away. Has that ever worked for anyone else? No. Things like she canceled our monthly Dungeons and Dragons family night, and it was something, yeah. And she was the one who decided we should do it. And I was a paladin, and I really liked being a paladin. So she canceled that. And then there were other clues, which I also ignored. So there I was, trying to make sense, and there was all of these thoughts that were coming to my head. And I was having this kind of random time, and I thought, you know, at the beginning of life, there's birth doulas who help you come through that real mess. And I kind of remember it hurt a little. And I kind of remember it was a bit of a mess. And I thought, so if there is a birth doula who helps you it out, I wonder if there's a death doula. And then I went, nah, that can't be something, right? Like, that's just completely crazy. So, I Googled it. And lo and behold, yeah, there's something called a death doula. And something deep inside me kind of went, whoa, you know, that's really interesting. Death doula. So I went on this exploration because for some reason I thought this is something that I'm maybe supposed to do. So I went on and I found a place and I went all in. I spent a year. I became a certified death doula, a death coach, and a conscious dying educator. And you know what? The one thing that I found was that when I found these journeyers who were doing the same thing, they loved to laugh, they loved life, and like me, they wanted to do something that made things a little bit better. So now I want to tell you about my friend Hannah. And Hannah was also one of the instructors, and she has been working as a death doula for years and years. And you know, you hear that thing, oh, they're so beautiful inside. But no, Hannah was gorgeous. I mean, she wasn't just beautiful inside. She was drop dead gorgeous. She had the kind of looks that young boys think about at night. She had the kind of looks that if someone's going to hold you, you want it to be Hannah. So, well, actually, honey, if you're not available, and, you know, and maybe it should be Hannah for me, and she can be on your list too. So, Ben was one of Hannah's clients, and he was close to death. And just to give you a little bit, Ben was part of the Uti Mountain tribe in Colorado. And so he had all of those beautiful traditions that they have. And when Hannah came in, she not only took care of some of the problems that he had physically, but no, she took care of his mental, his physical, and his emotional problems. Hannah has like this superpower that when she's with someone, she listens so intently that you just know that she understands what you need. So just to give you a little bit of background about Ben. Ben had cirrhosis of the liver, and that's what he was dying from, and it was an addiction that was ending his life early. But you know, that's not really important, because what was important is that he was surrounded by people who loved him. His family had been gathering in his home for the last week. And Hannah could see that his time was getting closer. And so she went and she gathered all of the people that were there. And for a brief moment, Ben had this surge of energy. And, you know, I'd like to say it was something that she had done, but no, that's something that is kind of common. And then Ben lapsed into a coma and he passed. And Hannah went into the living room to mourn and to be with people and so that everybody could comfort each other and talk about Ben. Now, just to let you know, Ben lived in a cabin in the mountains in Colorado. And when you went and looked outside, all you saw were trees and the sky. It was absolutely beautiful. So they are sitting in the living room and they heard a noise. And so they all turned and looked. And up onto the deck. Now, just before this, I want to tell you that once Ben had lapsed into a coma, Hannah couldn't talk to him about all the things that she saw in his home. And so Ben had like bear statues, he had bear books, he had all kinds of bear paraphernalia, and she couldn't talk to him about what was with all these bears. So she noticed that and she thought maybe it was just part of what was part of his spiritual nature. But they heard this sound, and when they looked up, there was a 500-pound bear at the window, staring in. Not a hint of threat, wasn't trying to break in. It just stood there, looking in for 5 minutes, just looking in the window. And the whole room, like, they were silent. They just looked at each other. They could not believe what they had just witnessed. And then they started shrieking and laughing and going, "Holy shit! What did we just see?" Now, I always, and if you talk to people who know me, they tell you that I'm an optimist. In fact, one of my friends had this story about me. She said that if I were to go to a place and see a barn full of manure, I'd get a shovel because I'd be sure there's a pony somewhere in there. So at the end with Ben, what I looked at was, what if all of the things that I saw, what if the things that I learned from Hannah, what if it wasn't a coincidence? What if I was meant to have this problem with my daughter, and I'm sure we'll eventually get over it. So I could take this course and become a doula, so that I could be here and tell you this story, because I always find that maybe someone needs to hear something that you know. And what if all of this isn't random? Ben's story reminds me that we can learn and that we are part of all of this wonder of the world. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with my daughter. There's still a lot of things to figure out, and there's some things and some hope that I found in learning the story about Ben, because I know the magic that can happen in the world. I know the story of a bear. And I also know where to find ponies.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Everybody, thank you for coming out.